You're training your memory synapses. All of these things are mnemonic. At some stage you memorized technological information. At some stage we memorized the names of people in our family. At some stage we learned to memorize certain works of poetry, of writing, the names of certain authors, how to say A, B, C, D, E, F. We needed to learn as children how to speak that language. There's a remarkable book called The Brain That Changes Itself. Who's read that? Is my hand the only one up? The brain doesn't switch off. There is an old folk tale, I guess is the best word to describe it, that says we only use 80% of our 10% of our brain, and that's actually turned out to be bullshit. We use 100% of our brain all the time. What we're picking up, how we can generate new neurons, how we can fulfill the criteria of consciousness is by recognizing the fact that we are, first of all, that we're mammals, and that we need to be recognized as mammals. Also, that we are not made up of one person, but countless trillions, and that we need to take all of those trillions of people into consideration when we eat, when we communicate. And you're in a situation where somebody's talking down to you, your body's reacting. That's what's going to happen. You'll feel it. Okay, so there's messages being sent between the brain and the rest of your body that person is scaring you. They're scaring you with what they're threatening. Similarly, there are people that will get trapped in events that happen in their lives to such a degree that they don't utilize that information for future behavior.
How are you affected after the kinds of situations where you've just told somebody that they're going to die the following year? Like, do you find that it hangs around you for the next couple of days? Or like, I'm just wondering like what you do out the other side to be able to have it not be seeping into you.
There's nothing to really unpack regarding how you will feel at the finalization of it. There's almost an exhilaration. It's the opposite. A sense of real freedom, real exhilaration, like you've gone there with this person and you've acknowledged what they're experiencing, what they may have had a fear of themselves. I can sit there and explain that to them and work with them, knowing that that's going to come. But at the same time, death doesn't define the living. A person who, for example, knows that they've got 6 months of body life left in them, that can be as wonderful to know as dying in your sleep and never knowing. It's as wonderful to know because you've got sufficient understanding of what you can prepare, how you can sort things out. I can, as clear as yesterday, remember a reading that was all about that person's death. And I got to the sphere of Binah and I said, your children are going to be okay. That was the heart and soul of that reading.
Mm.
That person knew they were going to die. I saw that they were going to die. And all I could think of, because I'm them, you're them. This is transference. You seriously transfer across. So when you hold your integrity stronger, you can actually be part of that transference yourself, rather than have it overtake you and overwhelm you. And you retain yourself even as that person possesses you, for lack of a better word. So that when I'm looking at the Stargate going, what is important here? What is important here? We know this person's got cancer. We know it's metastasized. We know they're at stage 4. We know they've got a few months left to live. What is important here? And bam, there it is. It says your children will be okay. And she wept and wept and wept. And I held her in my arms because that's all she needed to know. I said, they'll grieve because they love you, but they will be okay. Do you get it?
Mm.
What card was it that told you that?
I don't know now. It would have been a whole thinking. It's never just one card. You know better than that.
No, but like you said, particularly the sphere of Binah, and I was like, oh, what was it in that sphere?
More than likely 10 of Cups.
Mm.
Something like that. was that deep connection with family. Although even now when I say that, I'm very aware that the Ten of Cups turned up in countless numbers of the readings of the boys who had AIDS in the 80s. It didn't show their death. It showed the Ten of Cups. It showed the death of their lovers, and it showed the death of their friends, because AIDS during the 1980s was the most insane, heartbreaking of viruses. But I'm not just talking one person, because this is another thing to realize, is that tarot is a force that will work with you. And if tarot wants you to learn something, it's going to give you 100, 200, 300 people repeating. And you're going to think, then again, you're going to think, I've hit a plateau. I'm going mad. I'm getting the same information for person after person after person. But you haven't hit a plateau. You're telling them exactly what's happening over and over again. And tarot is teaching you to recognize death. So that there's death over here, Ten of Swords, death card, or sometimes just the death card. Ace of Swords, death card, natural death. And then over here is an outcome, for example, in Keta, as the outcomes to a supposed dead reckoning. Ten of Cups, Ten of Cups, Ten of Cups. You're going, how is this so? They're saying, what's my destiny? I said, you're going home. And again, cry after cry after cry, because the way you say it, this voice is not necessarily just you, is you enter into the zone. The more you work this, the smoother tarot is at communicating, utilizing your wisdom, your knowledge. The more you learn, the deeper you get, the more tarot can discuss what is necessary. The less you know, the more confused you're going to be. With Bernard years ago, about a reader that he went to years ago, who gave him information that made no sense to them. And that was because they didn't have the words. They didn't have the skill, and they didn't have the language to be able to explain what they were seeing. And this is what you must do, is gather this language. This is a language. Whether we're talking about the way shower cards, whether we're talking about the journey cards, the positioning. Have you ever seen the lace makers of Turkey and Greece and different parts of Europe? You ever seen that work? Embroidery, tapestries. You ever seen tapestries? How much skill, look, the Persian carpets that are based on family traditions of patterns. How the fuck do they do that? They do it because they learn the language of their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, generation after generation. They learn the language, yes? The language of thread, the language of colour, the language of significance of putting colour and thread together to create a fleur-de-lis. The understanding of what a fleur-de-lis might actually represent. The understanding of how important the fleur-de-lis is in certain parts of Europe and what it represents. So these representations, for example, in Tatao, if we're looking at a symbol of almost of a Y node, you'll see that very often with the stitching techniques of the Sami people, of the people of the northern regions around the Arctic. These are representing ancestors. These are people symbols. So the symbolism is very similar to hieroglyphics, and is very similar to the paintings in the caves of different parts of the world where our ancestors have left their mark and said, hey, John was here. Where did the First Nation people come to understand that white ochre would cause them to be invisible? It's camo. Is it done ceremoniously? Of course it's done ceremoniously, because the understanding of your ways of hunting, gathering, feeding, loving, weaving, tending, all of these things are taught intergenerationally, and so of course they're celebrated. And as for the feeling at the end of Nilla, for talking about that feeling, I am absolutely exhilarated when I've been on and I've been able to share that with that person, because we've shared such a moment of intimacy. They're living and they're dying, their understanding of how this will affect their family. But there's also a question here, if I can mention this interesting aspect of this, is how, if they're dead, do they know what their family is going to be experiencing unless they're still alive? Science had to agree at when a body was dead, because it doesn't die, it just keeps, because we're mostly we're lots of water, but we're also bacteria and all kinds of critters. We're creatures, just so many trillions of creatures. And just because the host body stops nurse doesn't mean the host body stops being alive. So an agreement had to be made. So all of your creatures are spreading far and wide in the wind and all through the gardens and just about everywhere else. And all of them are you. And all of them are listening. And yes, they may very well incorporate themselves into a new form, a new body, baby, just about. Why do you think babies cry? They're going like, what the fuck just happened there? Somebody else's bacteria just came on in. And so many people I know say to me, I'm not like my family. What is that? That's a mystery, but it's worth thinking about. That if the bacteria are flightful, and this could very well be their mating in space and time, and therefore they're traveling through the centuries without dying, just interbreeding, and then all of a sudden a newborn child happens, and the child is born and goes, takes a breath, and in you go. There you go. Here I am. And so you don't fit the family mold because you've got these other people have come in with your first breath from the ancient of days, may have been 1,000, 2,000 years ago, meandering through space and the weather patterns, and they've found a newborn infant and gone, oh, host. There you are. Next body. I mean, it's reincarnation, but it's not the reincarnation that says boing, 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 boing.